From South Carolina Public Radio, this is the South Carolina Lede. I'm your host, Gavin Jackson, and this episode was recorded on March 7th, 2025 from South Carolina Public Radio studios here in Columbia. On this episode of The Lede, tort reform.
Yeah, you're the man!
What is it? How does it affect you? Why does it affect you? Where does it live? Can I get it from you? These are some of the questions we will attempt to answer as we recap a week of activity around two major bills dealing with this long-brewing issue, from the wide-ranging Senate Bill S-244 that is still being debated in the Senate to the House's H-3497 liquor liability bill, which was passed by the chamber on Thursday with unanimous bipartisan support, which doesn't happen every day, folks. We're talking two trains on two tracks, two hearts beating as one. This is your captain. Instead, this is like two planes taking off at the same time on parallel runways, both going to the greater New York area, where the temperature is balmy 73 degrees. One is a bigger plane that took forever to board, has been beset with delays, and is going to JFK. And the other, a smaller plane, had no delays. Everyone's pretty happy. No one's trying to open an exit door, and it's going to Newark. Easy in and out. So stay tuned for this discussion. Also, stay tuned for the wind down where we prepare you to spring forward. Think of us as you save daylight this Sunday and spring forward by losing an hour with the start of daylight saving time. Yes. You can talk to us about that in the wind down by calling our voicemail box at 803-563-7169. We want to hear from you. Tell us how you cope with these changes as man controls time or attempts to. 803-563-7169. We will answer these hard-hitting questions. We're going to start with some basics here, and this comes courtesy of the State House Gavel blog that you can find on southcarolinpublicradio.org Tuesday through Friday during session that is produced by me, Mayan Schechter, and the Russ McKinney. It is wonderful stuff. Check it out. But a tort, in short, is when someone causes harm to another and has to pay the victim for that injury. At issue is how the legal system determines who is at fault and how much plaintiffs are due. And when we say tort reform, we're talking about lawmakers trying to limit the liability payouts by defendants, such as business and insurance companies. Supporters argue that current fault laws are unfair and exposure to large verdicts from lawsuits can force small businesses into bankruptcy. Opponents of tort reform, primarily victims groups and the lawyers who represent them, argue that stricter liability rules, and there are some liability limits already written into law, those restrict victims' access to justice and let wrongdoers escape full accountability. Read money here. Enter liquor liability insurance. That's who's behind door number one. Okay. Restaurants and bars are required to carry $1 million insurance policies, which has become more expensive since there are fewer insurance carriers in the state, and expenses have risen to about $3 per every $1 paid in premiums. These rates have forced some closures of establishments and led to cost increases for those that are still open. Ask any owner and they will tell you. Even for establishments that have never made an insurance claim or been sued, which can happen as a result of someone being served too much or having been served and then maybe they went somewhere else and had more drinks, became more inebriated, then decided to get behind the wheel, resulting in injuries to themselves, someone else, property, etc. That results in insurance going up on them and eventually all of us. Kind of how our not-so-healthy habits as Americans have led us to ever-increasing insurance premiums, whatever. I'm not going there today. That's just a brief overview, and in that example, I only mentioned bars and restaurants, but S-244, that Senate bill that's still up for debate, encompasses a lot. We're talking homeowners insurance, which is becoming harder to get along the coast, product liability insurance, medical insurance, literally any insurance. That's why there have been so many hearings already around this bill. Hundreds of thousands of dollars are floating around on both sides of this debate, from the legal and insurance industries and businesses caught in the balance. That's because when you start changing these laws, like back in 2017, when the state required businesses serving alcohol after 5 p.m. to carry $1 million liquor liability insurance, you end up in a place like this 8 years later. That being said, the week started Tuesday with a 7-hour-long Senate session where lawmakers began opening discussions on that all-encompassing S-244 tort reform bill. It was a tort bender, if you will. Now, this is as close to law school as I've gotten in my time covering the State House, and I've covered some debates. So there were intricate examples and hypotheticals floating around and attempts at some direct questions and answers, which is where I want to start with this questioning from Greenwood Republican Senator Billy Garrett, who is an attorney, to Fort Mill Republican Senator Jeff Johnson, also an attorney, who was taking questions from the Senate well. Here's Johnson.
Our restaurants, our bars, they are asking for help. They're asking for relief. This is, albeit a stab in the dark perhaps, but it is based on the knowledge we have, our best effort to provide them the relief that is desperately needed and to create a more balanced and fair playing field and to protect them from liability, whether perceived or real, that exists.
Senator, you know I'm a staunch conservative. I'm a capitalist. I want every insurance company to make a big old profit. I want every person in every small business in my community to make a big old profit. But usually I sign a contract with folks if I expect to get a return on my investment. And when I buy insurance, I expect them to cover my losses. Is that, you agree with that?
That is what insurance does.
All right, and we have to read those contracts to make sure that the little fine print is all what it ought to be, right?
Yes, sir.
And you trust those insurance companies to tell us they're going to reduce our premiums if we pass this legislation?
And Senator, I'll just say that no insurance company ever testified that it would lower premiums. I think that the key, what we do know is that the more insurers who are willing to offer coverage and insurance tends to drive down the cost of that coverage. We have an extremely small amount of carriers who are continuing to be willing to sell coverage in this state. And the goal of this legislation is to increase those who will, and by doing that, the side effect, and this may take years, because the Director of the Department of Insurance said, this will not happen overnight. This will take years, and that the net effect is that premiums go down. But can I promise you, and can anyone promise you that this is going to happen? No, sir, we can't, but I will reiterate what we're doing. Premiums are going the wrong way.
Okay, so again, more of a bit of an overview there. But the spiciest moment of Tuesday's debate involved a line of questioning by freshman firebrand Senator Tom Hernandez, a Somerville Republican who spoke to Johnson about the large amounts of money floating around in the lobby involving this issue. Take a listen.
I'm going to say the quiet part out loud. Did you know, Senator, that over the last few weeks, I have been approached by people who both support and who are against 184 and 244?
Senator, that doesn't surprise me. I think every senator in this chamber has had that experience over the past few weeks and will continue to do so until this leaves our body.
And did you know, here's the quiet part out loud, did you know that the trial lawyer lobby has offered me campaign fundraisers in the amount of $50,000 to $100,000 per campaign if I voted against this? Did you know that?
I was not aware of that, Senator.
And did you know that
Senate will suspend? I would just caution this. Let's caution the body, stand at ease momentarily.
The questioning immediately stopped, as you heard, and Senate President Thomas Alexander moved for the Senate to stand at ease, resulting in senators huddling up over the incendiary allegations of a quid pro quo that essentially impugns the entire body. Senate rules forbid senators from attacking each other, and while this wasn't a direct attack at any one senator launched by Hernandez, it could still be construed as, an attack on everyone. Now, following that 10-minute recess, Johnson continued taking questions at the well, including several from Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Luke Rankin, but Hernandez suspended his line of questioning. 2 hours later, he put out a statement saying, in part, quote, "I did not intend to accuse anyone of wrongdoing, but to simply highlight the realities of how legislative debates unfold publicly and behind the scenes," quote. On Facebook, later Tuesday, Fernandez responded in a post acknowledging that he misspoke. He wrote, quote, "The part they didn't let me finish is the other side did the same thing. However, I misspoke. They didn't offer in exchange for a vote. They simply offered. Both sides did," quote. Essentially walking back the walk back. Tricky situation there, but just goes to show how much is going on, how much is at stake with this debate. We're just talking about so much money here. We're talking about both sides. We'll have an idea of this when we get to see some filings from all the lawmakers later this spring. But yes, it is a testament to all eyes being on this issue. Now, smash cut to Wednesday, where in a packed State House lobby, thanks to competing special interest events like Clemson Day, the second floor lobby reached capacity. Like, you could not go back upstairs because they were full. For a press conference with the governor and Senate Republican leader Shane Massey, who's the sponsor of S-244, as well as some other advocates. Governor McMaster asked the legislature, as he did in his January State of the State address, that the General Assembly send him a common-sense tort reform bill. Here's the governor.
The rules on joint and several liability have introduced an element of uncertainty in our state. And uncertainty, ladies and gentlemen, is the enemy of prosperity. We must eliminate that uncertainty. Today, individuals and businesses, both large and small, are being unduly penalized for the actions of others too often through crippling financial judgment and skyrocketing insurance premiums. This cannot be allowed to continue. We must be sure that those injured receive full compensation for those injuries, but not at the expense of those not responsible for those injuries. I ask the General Assembly to find a common sense solution, one that will provide accountability, certainty, and full and just compensation, but without damaging our economy.
You heard the governor mention joint and several liability, which is when, if, for example, I was injured by a drunk driver, I could sue them and every single bar from the first to the last one that served them for damages, regardless if they just had one beer or 6 at that establishment. That's where things get tricky. Here's a bit from Edgefield Republican Senator Massey.
Across the board, our liability insurance rates are higher than our neighbors. There are some here who would tell you that the reason those rates are higher is because of insurance greed. As if insurance companies don't make money in North Carolina and Georgia and Florida and Tennessee and Alabama. Surely they do, which means there is another reason that rates are higher in South Carolina. That reason, ladies and gentlemen, is because of our lawsuit industry. Our civil justice system is broken. It is not broken for insurance companies. It is broken for the people in the State House lobby today.
Maayan Schechter was at this press conference where they did not take questions, so not really a true press conference. And she spoke with Christopher Pratt. He is a personal injury attorney, and he talked about his issues with the bill S-244.
Specifically, we're speaking out against the 10-month rule. And that's something that hasn't been talked about a lot. You didn't hear one word at that press conference about the 10-month rule. But the 10-month rule is a provision in Section 13 of S-244 that requires all of us, each and every one of us, all of these businesses that are here today, all of the citizens of South Carolina, to wait up to 10 months before an insurance company pays your claim. Please, I hope somebody at that press conference can tell me how our citizens waiting 10 months helps anyone to get a valid insurance claim paid. And that's what I want to talk about with this bill, is that we have a real problem with our bars and restaurants, but that problem is being used as a Trojan horse to move through a massive tort reform bill that does nothing but bail out big insurance. And it doesn't help the citizens of this state. The 10-month rule is a perfect example, but there are others. Section 9 and 10 completely gut your own automobile insurance without even telling you about it. It allows the insurance company to shove fine print in your auto policy that takes half your coverage away if you're hit by a drunk driver or a bad accident. That's why Mothers Against Drunk Driving opposes this bill, because it's bad for victims, it's bad for citizens. Massive sections, sections 6, 9, 10, 13, 11, and 12, are all insurance welfare. It is not American. It is a complete attack on our constitutional 7th Amendment right.
Debate continued for a second day. Meanwhile, over in the House, let's say a different airport.
Okay.
A second train left the station, or plane took off. I'm trying to make this engaging for you guys. That bill, H 3497, a bill that specifically targets the liquor liability issue that has understandably been driving so much of this debate, was moving. That bill, which we'll break down in a moment, was approved by the Judiciary Committee on Tuesday and put on the House calendar Wednesday for a vote on Thursday. Again, more in a moment. But staying with the Senate on Thursday, Flight S-244 hit some major turbulence. The amendment process, which is when senators propose changes to a bill, which are then debated and then voted upon, well, that got underway. And the first amendment by Georgetown Republican Senator Stephen Goldfinch, as it's written, would essentially blow the bill up based on Massey's interpretation. And while he thought he had the votes to defeat it, that was not the case. In fact, the failed 19-25 vote to table the amendment to essentially kill it did not go through. It stayed active, and that prompted a quick adjournment Thursday afternoon, as the next move would have been to adopt the amendment. So the machinations of this first week have left S-244 in limbo. It's unclear if both engines are working on this flight, and whether it'll make it to JFK. Could crash land, hard to say, with everything going on these days. But another flight is fully fueled, and that took off by a vote of 109-0 on Thursday, en route to a similar destination, Newark.
All right.
Liquor liability. That would be flight H3497, folks. Now, this bill deals just with making changes to that $1 million liquor liability insurance that businesses that sell alcohol after 5 p.m. have to carry. Portions of the bill are written so as to lower the amount of liability insurance an establishment has to carry. If, for example, it closes before midnight, and every hour prior to that, they could knock off $100,000 in coverage, as well if they have their servers trained up on responsible serving. So less money for 11 p.m., less money for 10 p.m., etc. Lawmakers hope this will create lower premiums and bring back more carriers to spur competition. This bill would also increase DUI penalties in a state that is third in the country per capita when it comes to DUI fatalities. This follows the requirement of an ignition interlock device law being passed last year. So they're trying to make some changes here because these are all contributing factors. But y'all, if you love your bars, get an Uber. So yes, after a relatively quick debate, the chamber passed the bill by 109-0, like I said, and House leadership spoke with reporters about the moves, including Judiciary Committee Chairman Weston Newton, whom I asked if the bill was a backup plan should the massive Flight 244 get bogged down.
It's evident by the vote today, 109 in favor with nobody opposing. We've all heard, this is an acute problem that our bars and restaurants are facing skyrocketing insurance premiums that are continuing to go up. In 23, we had an ad hoc committee, passed a similar bill in the House last year that provided step down in the insurance requirements. Essentially, if you're a good actor and you're not going to be engaged in activities later at night and you require safe serve training, and otherwise it lowers the required premiums that you have. But, against all of this, the backdrop of the debate is that South Carolina is still 1, 2, 3, 4, somewhere in that range in per capita DUI fatalities in the country. So what we did this year is we took the success we built on last year that unfortunately the Senate didn't act on, but also addressed the specific language that all of the bars and restaurants that came to see us identified that their insurance representatives and agents told them it was a very specific provision in the law that was causing the skyrocketing premiums. That's the joint and several liability exception. So what we did is presented a real solution to a real problem so that the bars and restaurants and the hardworking folks in South Carolina that support our tourism industry aren't held hostage anymore to some effort to do something different. We're trying to provide them immediate relief, and quite frankly, a unanimous vote in here today is fabulous. But let me say, as the Speaker said, so we removed the joint and several liability provision in the bill this year, but also recognizing that messaging is important and conduct. My challenge to members of the Judiciary Committee, and I applaud Robbie Robbins for his hard work in this regard, who does work in the DUI arena, both as a prosecutor and now as a defense attorney, is we need to strengthen penalties because we can do all this to protect our our bars and restaurants, our small businesses. But at the end of the day, we got to be protecting the public as well. So the Safe Serve training component and the DUI increase in penalties are targeted to do that. So I'm delighted. I look forward to this bill going across to the Senate, and I hope they'll take it up as quick as they can.
Do you see this as a second way to get something done this session if that gets bogged down?
Well, I mean, look, we passed it last year after an ad hoc committee. We had a study committee this past fall that was both a joint House and Senate study committee. They basically came back and the recommendation was what the House has done previously makes sense. So we went further than that this year and specifically included under the label of tort reform. Everybody has said joint and several is the problem in the liquor liability context. Fine. We took it head on and said, pull it out. But at the same time, we got to begin to try to conform conduct, and increasing the DUI penalties is the way to try to do that.
So as of our taping, that's where things stand with the two bills. We will continue to watch the Senate debate on this and watch how fast H. 3497 moves through the committee process in the Senate. The House takes up its $14 billion budget on Monday, and that is all it will do next week, and then it will be in perfunctory session the week after that. So a lot of things that happened this week we will revisit on Tuesday's podcast, so don't worry. Really wanted to drill down on Tort. We've been talking about this. Hopefully you have a better idea of what's going on here. I'm going to land this plane because I can't do any more metaphors about planes. Sorry, we have no one's baggage on this flight. We forgot to load the baggage. Welcome to the wind down section, our little break from the news and tort reform. We're glad you're here, along with A.T. Shire, lead podcast producer.
Hello, everyone. Good to hear you.
Did you enjoy all the flight metaphors, the planes?
I love how much plane sound effects I now have in my archive. Yeah, that's great, Gavin. I encourage you to have fun, though. Have fun with it. Have fun with it.
Get on a plane. Everyone likes to fly somewhere fun.
You know what, everyone? Be happy, because torts, they can be dry. And here Gavin is going out of his way to put a bunch of mixed metaphors in there. Oh, it's fun.
I was really pushing off this episode, and
It's the only way you can get through it, because it can be dry. Mm-hmm. It's tough. It's tough.
Well, we'll have an extra hour to do that this weekend and going forward until November.
I hate it. I'm dreading this. I have a 10-month-old child. Rena is 10 months old. I'm nervous about how that's going to go. And
schedule.
I don't know if am I going to be worse and just I'm projecting on the child who's not really going to care. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I got a 10-month-old child who's trying to walk, and she's used to her timing, and I'm very...
I got to see her the other day at a restaurant, Masa. I got to hold her. In a restaurant. Gosh, thank God they had liability insurance, because I could sense he was like, okay, how many margaritas has this guy had? And I'm like, listen, this is my baby.
It was fine. Rena
dancing like
loves Mexican food.
Well, and I got to meet your father for the first time, and your stepmother.
Hi, Andy Share. Hey,
I was like, oh my God.
Yep, there they are.
Finally.
Yep, there you go. I thought I
keep
saw
him
your
away
car.
from me.
Yeah. You hide. Do I embarrass you, AJ? No, I don't care.
It worked out well. You were in that front seat right there in the restaurant, so you see everybody.
Immediately in. The weirdest thing about this, and then we can move on to daylight savings again. But my parents, they texted us, said, do you want to go to Masa?
Sure.
We go, sure. They go, what time do you want to go? We say 6:30. I get there. My dad has already finished his drink. They've eaten chips and salsa. I get there at 6:27, okay? And I go, guys, how long have you been here? They're like, oh, we got here 35 minutes ago.
What?
Because they were worried about getting a table, which would not have been an issue.
Parking's harder there.
And then by the time it was time to go, my dad, we weren't done eating. He was standing up at the table, ready to leave, because he'd been there 30 minutes longer than us. And I'm like, Dad, what are you doing? This is your fault. But anyway.
It's all about the timing, yeah. I was there with Mary Green.
We love
WIS.
her. We love her.
Mary Green.
Yep.
Love catching up with her. Good to see people bopping there.
Gavin, you mentioned my child.
Much needed. Yes, the margaritas were needed after the debate.
You had a child momentarily.
Correct. Yes.
I
was entrusted. I was worried about how much liability insurance I have.
Yes.
And I felt like I didn't have enough because I had to babysit.
Yeah.
On last Friday, TGIF.
Yes.
And I would, eventually, I'll babysit for you if you ever need me. Whatever. I can be a trusted adult here.
That's on the record right there. That's on the record.
It reminds me of the time when I had to walk my 3 nephews to the beach a couple summers ago, and I was like, "Oh my God, no one walk on the road!" Like it was
the pressure.
It was too much. Mm-hmm. But now, older and wiser. But good friend of the pod.
Yes.
icon, Meg Kennard.
I'd say probably the ultimate friend of the pod.
Sure, we can go there.
She's the only one on a council. She's the only one with a council seat.
The lead fashion council.
Correct.
She texts me last Friday, and I kind of get the gist that she wants to hang out with me because I hadn't seen her in a while, and then also hang out with her daughter Adair. Hadn't seen her in months.
Mm-hmm. Last time I saw Adair, she had a concussion.
And I'm like, sure, great. And then Meg texts back, okay, well, she ends school at this time. You can pick her up after this time. And I was like, oh.
I'm babysitting.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was
I'm gonna be sick.
I was bamboozled.
You were hoodwinked.
Shanghai, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
Of course, but being such a good friend, Meg does so much for me that I was like, of course I would do it anyway if she asked. But I was like,
cool anyway.
There's no going. Yeah, and I want to hang out with her, I want to catch up with her. But there's no going back on that. You're not going to be like,
you already said yes.
I have to fill basically 3 hours with a 13-year-old, which is fine because in some ways I am a 13-year-old.
Sure.
I can just drive and go out and have fun.
I can attest to the veracity of that.
So I'm racking my brain. I'm like, oh my God, what are we going to do? So like, I'm like, we're going to go to Ulta. We'll go to Cantina, get some chips. And maybe we'll go to Target, we'll go. So I pick up Adair, and it's great. It's great Friday afternoon. We're having fun. We're catching up. We're talking about her boyfriend. We're talking about all this stuff. And she's like a grown person. She gets it. Meg has raised such a great daughter that she has a level head on her shoulders that she can carry conversation with an adult. So we're walking around like Ulta, and we're talking about skincare, and so it really works out. But then she's like, get away from me. Stuff like that. Like, he keeps following me. I'm like, okay, child. Like,
the joke is over.
Then we get
is over.
We get some eyebrow brushes. We get some things. Like, we talk about what we're using because, the kids they're going overboard on the skincare at that age.
Your skin's
She's a smart one.
Your
She's a smart one.
good,
She's
though.
not doing that. She's like, yeah, I got friends that are using retinol. I'm like, da. You got the good skin right now.
Wait till you're 30 to do that.
And then we go to Cantina, and she's like, oh, this is funny to watch how people are like looking at me. But she's like, she was enjoying it.
It's Dad's weekend.
Yeah. Oh, it was Parents' Weekend.
No, I'm saying that it's alternating weekends and it's Dad's weekend.
Oh, yeah. So then we're hanging out. I'm having a beer, but I'm like, oh, I guess I have to be responsible. So I'm only have one. Like, we're talking about tort reform here.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, what else are we going to do now? But then she takes me to get bubble tea, which I've been dying to do. I've never done this before. Yes. And it's such a teen girl thing to do because everyone in the shop is a teen girl.
Yes.
And me. And I'm like, Adair, you tell me what to order here. I don't know what to do. It was
Take
okay.
the lead.
The milk tea, that sounds like something that you'd be professing about. Not good. It was
I just don't like little exploding the
chewy tapioca
balls
pearls
in my mouth.
Yes.
It's not for me.
I was like, okay.
Yogurt exploders, gushers in my mouth. Like, no, I don't think so, dude.
And then luckily by the time we parked at Target, Meg is like, hey, I'm done doing these things. I'm like, oh God, okay.
You made it.
Meet me at ETV and I'll give you your kid back. It's your weekend now.
That's what we'll do, the drop.
But it was good. We had a good time. I felt more like a parent than I have in years. I'm really coming to my own now.
Good for you.
And hopefully by the time this happens again, she'll be able to drive.
This is how Gavin got his groove back, folks. Anyway.
Oh, so yeah, tell us about your friends bamboozling you.
Hoodwinkings and the sort.
What have you.
Yep.
Capers et al. But yes, that's what I've been dealing with.
Great for you, Gavin.
Thank you.
So happy. I hope
Finally
we
had a
make
story
it
to share.
to Monday where
take it easy out there because the daylight saving,
the
saving.
Yes.
There are studies. It shows that everyone's annoyed and that they're taking it out while they're driving.
We're gonna have heart murmurs and stuff.
Just take it easy, guys.
Yeah. Hopefully we make that. Gavin saved you from my list of complaints on my phone with his story. So very good, Gavin. Thank you very much.
We'll save this for Monday when we're all complaining.
Yeah. If you don't call, you get my list.
That's what
you get my list.
You get the list.
You get the list again. Okay, Gavin. Say goodbye.
803-563-7169. That's how we can prevent the list from coming back out. You can give us a shout there and tell us about your favorite newspaper, which you should support, as well as checking out news on scetv.org and southcarolinapublicradio.org. The South Carolina Lede is a production of South Carolina Public Radio. Our producer is A.T. Shire. Amy Crouch is our supervising producer. Sean Birch is our executive producer. This podcast is produced with support from PRX and is made possible in part by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, as well as listener contributions to the ETV Endowment of South Carolina. For the South Carolina Lede, I'm Gavin Jackson. Be well, South Carolina.
I'm worried about Rena. I'm worried.
Listen, I'm just going to say I'm worried.
I'm worried. I'm saying it. I'm just scared.